What were some of the other key points? What stood out for you in Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's speech?
Well, I think that issue of trust that you mentioned was key to his statement. In many ways, he was talking quite a lot about both of his predecessors, Liz Truss and Boris Johnson. That section where he talks about restoring trust, and that section where he talks about difficult decisions being needed, integrity and professionalism, he said, at every level of government. Trust is earned. Many will see that as a direct reflection on the premiership of Boris Johnson and a desire to move on. But he also paid tribute to the incredible achievements of Boris Johnson in office. And when it comes to Liz Truss, he did say that he thought that she was right to try and go for more growth in the British economy, but also said mistakes were made, and he says that he is the man to fix them. The economy is clearly going to be front and centre on his to-do list, and it was front and centre in that speech outside Downing Street as well. He talked about the 2019 manifesto. That is a clear attempt to try and see off some of those calls from opposition parties for a general election. That is how he will say that he does actually have a mandate, despite the fact that he has not been voted in by the wider electorate to be Prime Minister. Heading into Downing Street to try and put together his first cabinet, we expect to see him try and bring in as many people from as many different factions of the party as possible to try and deliver that unity that he says that he wants. An extraordinary period in British politics. He takes over from Liz Truss. He only has to survive himself until December the 14th to be in office longer than she was.
And, he's mentioned at the start talking about fixing, Liz Truss's mistakes, and he plans to do it immediately. So, and you talked about how, he plans to unite the party. But looking at his first immediate task ahead and also in the weeks ahead, how do you think, give us some examples of what he means about fixing the economy?
Well, a lot of that will come down to exactly who's going to help fix it with him, or at least attempt to do so. And that depends on who he has as his finance minister, as his chancellor. I think there is an expectation now here in Westminster that it's likely, not certain, but likely that Jeremy Hunt will be retained in that post. And it's also considered very likely indeed that they stick to that date of October the 31st to set out a fiscal plan for the wider economy, things like spending cuts, but also where will taxes go? How many more U-turns will be made from the mini-budget that Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng tried to put in place before it effectively disintegrated around them because of market reaction? And so whoever it is that he's working with in number 11 at the Treasury as Finance Minister, that is going to be, as is always the case, the absolutely critical relationship in government. But there are other critical relationships too. Who will he have as his Home Secretary, his Foreign Secretary, for example? Those cabinet appointments, crucial to, as I say, delivering unity in the Conservative Party, because at times recently the party has seemed completely and utterly dysfunctional. And if Rishi Sunak wants to be able to deliver that stability, he also needs to be able to deliver stability here at Westminster, in the House of Commons, to be able to get through legislation through Parliament, to be able to work with that large parliamentary majority that he has been left by Boris Johnson that was won in 2019. And that is also part of reflecting on that 2019 manifesto that he says he's going to remain committed to and try and deliver upon.
Now, Rishi Sunak, historic moment. He's the first British Asian Prime Minister for the UK, a Hindu as well. He's also the third UK leader in just 7 weeks. What is the general ground sentiment for his premiership?
Very, very mixed views indeed. Of course, across the political spectrum, it is being welcomed that he is the first British Asian Prime Minister, the first Hindu Prime Minister of the UK. These are historic things that are happening. And as I say, broadly across the political spectrum, that is being welcomed. That said, Rishi Sunak is not necessarily universally popular. He has been part of, for a long period of time, a government that has been crashing in the polls. Now, he wasn't part of Liz Truss's administration, but he was, right up until towards the very end, part of the Boris Johnson administration, which was already showing are faltering in the polls against the opposition Labour Party. Now, Labour will say that Rishi Sunak is closely tied to Boris Johnson and everything that went with that particular government, from Partygate to everything else. Rishi Sunak will try and put some distance between himself and the former Prime Ministers that have gone before him, Liz Truss and Boris Johnson, and we heard that reflected in his speech outside Downing Street as well. But it again shows the incredibly difficult balance that he has to strike, because he knows that Boris Johnson and Liz Truss both have areas of support within the Conservative Party that he can't leave behind. He can't ostracise those people completely, and that's part of the reason in that speech outside Downing Street on the way in for the first time as Prime Minister, while he did acknowledge some of the criticisms that have come with those previous two administrations, he also paid tribute to both those people as well.
Olly Barratt in London, thank you very much for that report.